Hello, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rebecca Nugent. I'm the Stephen E. and Joyce Feinberg Professor of Statistics and Data Science at the Department of Statistics and Data Science at Carnegie Mellon University.
Hello everyone, and I'm Philipp Burckhardt. I'm a current postdoc at the Department of Statistics and Data Science at Carnegie Mellon University.
All right, so in today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at the integrated statistics learning environment. Okay, data science, a view. Where did this integrated statistics learning environment come from? Well, when we think about data science, we often think about a process or a workflow of solving real problems with real data. So what do we mean by that? If we look at this graphic from the Harvard Data Science Review, Jeanette Wing, first author, we'll see that over on the left, I have questions, ideas, people, a real problem that I'm trying to solve with data. And the phases of the data science or the data life cycle roughly move in the following direction. After we think about our question and problem, we move through generation of data, collecting data, thinking about processing it, storage, where do I put it, how do I manage it, how do I access it. Once all of those tasks are taken care of, we move more into the visualization and analysis and modeling parts of the data lifecycle, and eventually we'll need to interpret those results and turn them into actionable recommendations for our stakeholders, or our consumers, or our users of information, our users of data. So right now, a big takeaway is that for us, data science starts with people and ends with people, and is all about solving real problems with real data. So throughout this data lifecycle, we're paying attention, of course, to management, security, privacy, ethics, and so on. And again, we move roughly from left to right, but really there are loops and iterations, and we often have groups of people working on data science problems. Experts are focusing on specific pieces, but we need project managers to oversee the entire pipeline. So what does that mean for education? Well, as we all know, we've had a massive explosion of statistics and data science programs all across the country, courses, materials, projects, real data sets everywhere. And the demand for these courses continues to grow. You can think of this almost as like the people science. And what we have now is an incredibly heterogeneous population that needs to learn about data. It's not just statistics majors or people in machine learning. All kinds of students from all kinds of different backgrounds need to learn about data, which means we need to build tools to educate everyone. But here's the flip side of that. We don't really have any idea what the people are doing when they look at data or why they're doing it. Human behavior is actually the driving force in that data analysis or that data science pipeline. At each one of those phases we looked at, people are making decisions about what they're going to do next. Sure, some of it's automated, but often human decision-making is driving what we're seeing in data science. And how can we incorporate that decision-making into our analysis or our understanding of how best to do data science or how best to teach it? So for example, how do different students or practitioners approach data analysis? What is the best way to write about statistics or write about data? What is the best way for us to present our results or write about a study that we've just done? How do we teach students how to do that? What's the best way to collaborate on data analysis and data science? How could we optimize group structure? What kinds of tasks could we assign different people? What's the best way for a group of different people with different skills to be put together in order to solve a very complicated data science problem? And how do we teach that? So what we're faced with here is a dual problem. We have education. We need to educate absolutely everybody these days about data. But we also want to be able to answer research questions. How can we study the science of data science? How can we best educate everyone? How can we learn about how to put together data science teams or to best solve data science problems? And one of the tools that we're using is something called the Integrated Statistics Learning Environment, or ISLE for short. Now, we're going to look at this website, but if you will join us at www.stat.cmu.edu/ISLE, you'll see that the Integrated Statistics Learning Environment Includes labs, surveys, widgets. You can build interactive lectures using sketch pads or your own slides. You can do group collaboration. Students can answer surveys during their lectures. We have data explorers available. They can write reports and give presentations on the data analyses that they are doing inside of ISLE. Students can share their work with each other as well as with their teaching assistants and instructors. They can also communicate in chat rooms, both with each other and their instructors. ISLE also supports data provenance, allowing people to better understand how their actions create the graphs and the analyses that they're choosing. It also supports learning about reproducibility, replicability. And these action logs that are stored during ISLE also help us with grading and annotations. So let's pause briefly and switch over to the website so you can get an idea of what we mean. Here we are at the ISLE website. Again, stat.cmu.edu/ISLE. And what you can see, we have several tabs. They're either going to be at the top or they'll be along the left, depending on your browser. And you can see all different use cases that are available for ISLE. ISLE has data explorers. It comes integrated with several tools that are of use. For example, remote videos, surveys, sketchpad functionality, response visualizers so that you can better understand how your students are understanding material during class, chat rooms, collaborative data analyses, etc. You will also see several videos that will show you examples of how to use ISLE. For example, using remote instruction. How do you lecture using ISLE in a remote environment, flipped classroom, for example, or just in a regular classroom if you are in person. You will also see a set of data explorers, which I will click on in a moment. We will have examples of how to work in groups on data analysis, sketch pads, a list of widgets that are typically used in statistics and data analysis courses, and so on and so on. All right, let's take a quick look at the types of data explorers that you can see. These are examples. If you click on these data explorers, you'll see an example of an explorer that supports student-driven or student engaged studies where they are deciding which questions to ask. So think about it as student-driven inquiry on open-ended data analysis. So this, for example, we've pulled up an explorer using NFL data, and the students are able to do a wide variety of models, tests, plots. They are then able to write reports, create graphs, and we'll show a video of that momentarily. Just to also give you a quick look at the types of widgets that are here as well. These are the general types of things you would expect to see possibly in lower level statistics or introductory statistics courses. But you have, for example, an opportunity to run hypothesis tests or to have widgets that explain what a confidence interval means or what a binomial distribution looks like. For example, interactive Venn diagrams, simulating throws of loaded dice, and so on. So to get started in the integrated statistics learning environment, there is a website called isledocs.com, and there you will see documentation for how you can get started installing ISLE, how to build lessons. There are tutorials there for commonly used features of ISLE, as well as a blog and a discussion forum for all the different users of ISLE to communicate different issues or ideas that they have. It really supports a community of ISLE users. Sometimes they share ideas that aren't related to ISLE. Sometimes they share ideas for different activities in the classroom, etc. It's a really nice community that we're building across the country. And there's also a link to the GitHub that has more information about how the ISLE editor is built and developed, etc. We will come to a little more about that later in the demo. But let's quickly look at that website. So here we are at isledocs.com, and you'll see that when I click on docs, we have information about getting started, installation, ISLE editor, lesson structure, building your first lesson, exporting lessons, and so on. We have different tutorials that are available about using images, text data, including data, course management, and so on. So this is really kind of a home base for where you might find some of your questions already answered, but also where you can find some information about how to get started on using ISLE. So at this point, what we'd like to do is show you a few case studies or a few videos that show you how IEL is actually used. All right, so right now, IEL is being used by hundreds of students at Carnegie Mellon, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. So at the undergraduate level, it's used freshmen all the way through upper level courses, depending on discipline. It is in beta use at other universities, also including community colleges, liberal arts schools. There are more starting later this fall, and we will have some other beta users starting in this spring. And this is not just in statistics and data science courses. We have other disciplines that are from STEM, but we also have humanities and general education courses supported on IEL. Even though it says integrated statistics learning environment, really the S should stand for subject or for student. Its home and its roots were in statistics and data science, but you can use IEL for any kind of lecturing in any discipline. We have English professors who use it. And again, we have other general education freshman courses, philosophy professors and the such, using IEL in ways that help support them in their learning environments, being in remote or in flipped classrooms, etc. So we also are using IEL to help with retraining or upskilling professionals in executive education environments. So in this particular case, IEL might be used to demonstrate models or to allow for interactive data analysis without requiring very detailed coding, which wouldn't be necessary in an executive education environment. And so in this case, we have professionals are learning more about data science, learning more about data, thinking about how to incorporate AI and ML into their own work environments. And right now we are using IEL in the healthcare space, in the finance space, and building out some solutions in the manufacturing space. IEL is also being used for interactive journal article content. So you can imagine that you have a paper that you are publishing in a journal that discusses statistical content. Online, you can put that paper with interactive statistics and data analysis material from IEL, so that if someone is reading the paper and needs a refresher on the statistical concepts that are covered there, they can just go next to the paper on the website and play with the interactive widgets and the interactive activities to learn more about the material that they're reading in the paper. Okay, so now let's do a few demonstrations. I'm going to flip over and show some videos. We'll be looking at an interactive lecture with an instructor view, interactive lecture with a student view, doing some collaborative data analysis with tracking, and show you a little bit about what data provenance and action logs look like and how they help us with grading. So again, these are very short clips to give you an idea of how IEL is used. And after this demonstration is over, we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have at a more detailed level. So here we have a sped up version of what the student could see. The instructor's on the video on the right. You can turn that off. The instructor is annotating the lecture notes the student's watching. Instructor is hand giving them questions that they can submit and to show their comfort level. The instructor is also able to give them questions on material that they're learning during the lecture to see how well they're understanding it. So students can interact with the lecture in that way as well. Students can also write their own annotations, and they can submit questions in a question queue that the instructor will actually see. So let's see what it looks like on the instructor side. The instructor side can see the students if you wish to turn the video on, but you can turn that off as well. The instructor can create those survey questions that the students saw. So the students aren't seeing the instructor do this. You could also create these questions in advance and not do them on the fly. The instructor is annotating the lecture slides, and those lecture slides can be uploaded at the end of the lecture. Here, the instructor is looking at the results from the whole class and seeing the entire distribution as to whether or not people understand the material. The instructor also gets an anonymized, if necessary, or it can have the students' names, a question queue that the instructor can answer questions live during class, or maybe those are questions that get answered at the end of class. One of the things that we see that's very popular is the ability to ask anonymous questions during the class so that students don't feel uncomfortable when they are in lecture trying to raise their hands or speak in front of the entire class. Okay, so let's take a look at what group collaboration looks like. What you're watching right now is a sped up version of a couple of students creating a data analysis together. So what they're doing is they're examining the relationship between patient age and hospital stay. And what you'll start to see is one of them is typing and working on one part of the report, and somebody else is working on a graph. Maybe they're in charge of the exploratory data analysis, but they're both contributing to the same data analysis, to the same report, the same platform. We find this incredibly helpful for things like group activities in class or in lab. We also find this useful during capstone projects or more complicated data analyses when students need to work together. But in all cases, this type of group collaborative data analysis really facilitates early real-world data analysis experience. So our freshmen, for example, are starting to do this on the 4th day of their first week of intro class. They are learning how to engage with real data. Okay, so what does this look like on the report? Well, here's just a full screen version so you can see that if you want, you can turn on the names and you can see which student or which practitioner is working on which thing. So right now, for example, you're seeing that Jamie McGovern is filling in the title. Rebecca Nugent is working on some of the text that's above the graph, and Philipp Burckhardt is working on the text that's below the graph. So it's helping you keep track of contributions or actions. And the reason that we're able to do this is because ISLE is set up for data provenance. It's set up to store action logs where we can track anything and everything that's happening in the system, which helps us on both the education side as well as the research side. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So here, we're creating a graph, we're editing it, and we're dragging it over into a report. And what's happened right now is there were a set of actions that I took to create that graph. And when I hover over it, I see those set of actions that have been stored. So anytime that I'm exporting my report or I'm saving it as an HTML, once I create that final report, all of the actions that were taken to build the tables, build the graphs, run the models, etc., are stored. And when you hover over these graphs and tables, you see these action logs. And in some ways, this really helps students understand how they built things. So when they go back or they need to reproduce their work, they can do so. They can also do so in the history tab or in their action logs. They can look to see, when did I do multiple regression? How did I build that graph? And they can rerun sections. What this also allows us to do is do annotations and grading right in the system. So when students start to work in ways or do actions that maybe aren't the best, or maybe there might be another option that you want them to consider, you can leave notes on their action logs. Instead of just looking and grading the final product, we can walk through the creation of that report and help them understand where they might have gone wrong or where they might want to make different decisions. And in that way, we're really getting and helping them understand how to do data analysis, not just grading the final report. So all of these videos that we just showed you were some quick snippets of different use cases and how ISLE is used. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Philip so that you can take a closer look at how you actually build a lesson in ISLE. Philip?
Okay, so to demonstrate data, what's the main idea here? It's to allow you to build lessons while abstracting away the complexity of programming, and so that you can really focus on the task at hand, like how to convey statistical concepts. So, and what you can see here in this view is pretty much what the students will see when they open the lesson. So right now it's blank, but let's just put in a heading. So I will go here, I can browse the available components that we have, and I will just put in a heading here. So, and then we want to customize this. This will be a lesson on confidence intervals. So I'll put in confidence intervals here. And we have this little GUI interface here where we can customize all these kind of components. Now let's put in a widget to explore like confidence intervals. So ISLE comes with a bunch of widgets that were already highlighted. And let's now put this in here, for example, where we can generate 20 confidence intervals for the for the mean, and we will just keep track of how many contain the true mean or not. And then we will put some questions underneath. So I will go here, and we have a list of all the possible question types that you can imagine, from matching things, multiple choice questions, etc. We're going to put it in a number question. So I'm going to go here, and we're going to ask how many of the 20 CIs, confidence intervals, do you expect to contain the true mean at the significance level of 0.95? And then we will use one of those other attributes here. We are going to supply the solution, which is 19 here. So let's just put this in, and now we have our question here underneath. Let's put in one more question, this time a free text question. And again, it's the same idea. We have a question that has different attributes, but works the same. So now let's ask, how will the width of the CIs change when the sample size increases? And then we can put in here a solution. And I will just, for brevity, just put something in here. You can give a thorough explanation. You can also add hints to really explain what's going on and help students if they get stuck with something. So now we have this here. Okay, what's the secret is here that we can actually look at the underlying code. So we are generating code here. And this is a combination of kind of HTML, JavaScript, Markdown, and LaTeX. So some technologies that you might be using, and so all standard web technologies. And those two views here are linked. So whenever I select something here, for example, I see it being highlighted here, and we jump there as well. So I can double click here, and it will move to the respective position on the preview here. I can also double click here, and I will jump here, and the same thing here as well. And we can always configure these components, these little building blocks, after the fact to change their behavior. Here we can see all the different attributes that are available, but we can also just, for example, go here, we can type a space, and then we see all the different options. Here we can, for example, change the notation for the quartiles in the intro text there, depending on what's kind of the standard used in that class. And if we don't really know what some of these things do, we can hover over them to get a quick explanation, as well as here, if we hover over the components themselves, we see a little description of what they are doing. So this makes it really easy to just put these lessons together. But if that's still too much, we have the ability to create templates that you can reuse, for building your lessons off of them. And you can even use some of the pre-built templates that come with ISLE. So we are going to do this now. We are going to use a pre-built template. Again, you can also create your own. And we're going to use a data explorer. So let me just open this here. Here, this is a data explorer, like of the type we've seen before. This one is on forest fires. So like that's a current topic, given what's happening on the West Coast. And we will just now put in our confidence interval widget here and our questions, and then we put in the forest fires data explorer underneath. So that's our lesson. Now let's just upload it and see how it's online. So I can go here to this export page. I put in, select a course, I put in a name. So I'll just do speed dating science, data science. And I'm going to upload this. And it will take us a few seconds until the lesson is uploaded. Once the lesson is uploaded, it's basically available for all your students. Let's have a look here. So we are going here. And now we see the lesson getting loaded, and we have all our questions. We have the data explorer. From here, we can also go to our dashboard. That's kind of the course administrating dashboard, where we can now also see our new lesson. Now, if that is still too much, there's one more thing you can do, kind of following the motto of Picasso, to steal, but to steal from the best. You can browse existing lessons that other instructors have done to just get a sense of how they work, and you can make them your own. So here we have this gallery of lessons that we can browse through, and we'll just grab a lesson here. There's a lab from one of our classes, and I will just go back to the editor here, and I will put it in. And now you can see it. This is a pretty long lesson. So things can get pretty complex, and we can see here we have this lesson. So let's make this our own. I will just put myself here as an author. But seriously, so like what is useful about this is that you can just browse existing lessons. You can get a sense of how are things working and how, like what is possible with the platform. Because there's a wide variety. You can like be it like a lesson that takes 5 minutes to build and like just to throw something together, or you invest the whole day to build a complex lesson that you can then reuse over multiple semesters. So all this is possible by using the IL editor. So hopefully this gives you a glimpse of what you can do and how it can be used.
So what you've just seen is just a quick demo on how you might build a lesson in IL and how you might take advantage of the interface that just allows you to drag and drop and click and build all sorts of lessons. Hundreds of lessons have been created in IL for thousands of users at this point. So there really is quite a bit of material that exists. So no one certainly has to start from scratch. Now, given that we're building all of these lessons and we're working with all of these users, what are we learning from them and what are we researching? So in this tutorial and demonstration, we're not going to walk through all of the research projects, but I do want to give you a flavor of the types of questions that are being answered in active research studies right now using IL. For example, there are teams of people studying how to write and structure arguments about data. They're in the process of constructing what may be the largest corpus of statistical writing samples in the country in order to study that. There is also active work being done on how to optimize a data science team or think about group collaboration. And that's being done using all of the tracking information about how groups of students are building data analysis reports. There's also research being done on just the science of data science. If we give the same data set to lots and lots of different students, and we can track how they're making decisions, what types of graphs are they looking at, what modeling choices do they make, then we get an idea of what the population of possible data analyses look like. Not just looking at the end product of the p-values that they got at the end, but thinking about the entire data analysis, a much richer source of information when we're thinking about reproducibility and replicability. We're also working on data literacy projects and trying to think about the longitudinal impact of data literacy, particularly early data literacy and related to access and equity. And then 2 new projects that are being kind of in early stages right now are how to think about building those lessons, particularly in a remote environment, with respect to student engagement. So within the IL system, you can see how many students answered your survey, what slides they were clicking on, how they participated in the lecture, and we can provide information back as, for example, when you have a survey question every 3rd slide, we see this percentage of student engagement during the lecture. So trying to really help understand, how do we build lectures? How do we build labs? How do we build activities to optimize student engagement? We're also starting to work on an adaptive review repositories where students can review concepts on their own, where IL randomly generates questions for them. So we're removing some of the burden from the instructors, but we're also thinking about tracking which concepts are students needing to review more often, when are they reviewing, how are they doing, and so on. So we really think of the integrated statistics learning environment, or IL, as a dual research and education platform. We're able to provide education for a very heterogeneous population at the same time as doing research on data science, research on how these students or practitioners are engaging in data science problems and data science work. Thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to learn more at il@stat.cmu.edu. Thank you.
Thank you.